He said it out loud so everyone could hear. Even the cleaning ladies invited. Why not? Laughter, clinking glasses. She stood by the exit, invisible as always. But she heard him. And 3 nights later, she walked in red. The mop bucket bumped softly against the doorframe as she eased it inside. Her sneakers made no sound on the marble floors, though the soles were worn thin and damp at the edges. The scent of bleach clung to her hoodie, but it was the perfume, old, layered, left over from 100 expensive evenings, that hit first. Heavy floral notes, gin, sweat, and some trace of caramel. The aftertaste of someone else's pleasure. Josephine Wallace. Jo on her tag, just her to most. Moved quietly through the banquet hall of the Barlow Club. Chairs pushed back, crumbs underfoot. One champagne flute teetered on the edge of a grand piano, as if waiting for her. She caught it before it fell. Behind her, laughter. Low and wet like bourbon gargling through a throat that never feared silence. 3 young men in tuxedos stood near the bar, sleeves rolled to their elbows. One of them, tall, red-cheeked, tilted his head toward her and dropped a linen napkin on the floor. "Ma'am," he said, deadpan. "Missed a spot." Snorts from the others. They didn't wait for her to respond. Jo crouched slowly, not out of weariness, but precision. She picked up the napkin without looking at them, folded it once, and placed it neatly with the others in her cart. The silence she gave back was louder than any insult. In the restroom, alone, she washed her hands twice. The faucet squealed and spat before warming. She pulled her sleeves down, watching herself in the mirror. The overhead light was sharp, clinical. It made her skin look tired. That didn't bother her. She reached into her bag, a tube of lipstick. She twisted it halfway out. Blood red. Not garish, not cheap. Just waiting. She twisted it back down. "Queen's night this Friday," said a voice in the hallway as she passed. She kept walking, but her eyes shifted, listening. Full tux, black tie, no press, all investors. Think bar. Of course Barlow. His show. His money. Then laughter again. One voice louder than the rest. Inside the staff locker room, Marie was smoking with the door cracked open. She didn't look up as Jo entered. "You hear about the invite list?" Marie said. Jo opened her locker. "They're calling it the Royal Red Ball. I swear these people think they're in some movie." Jo slid her hoodie off the hook, folded it. Marie exhaled smoke through her nose. "That fool Felix said something yesterday, real loud, about inviting even the cleaning staff." Jo's hands paused. "He was joking, of course. I mean..." Marie looked over. "You're not really thinking of..." Jo closed the locker with a soft click. Her shoes squeaked slightly on the tile. Marie watched her leave and shook her head. At the bar that night, Felix Barlow stood tall and sweaty, champagne raised in his left hand like a trophy. His voice rang out across the room like a showman's bell. "I want this one to be unforgettable," he said, leaning into the mic. "We'll even let the janitors in, yeah?" The crowd howled. Someone choked on laughter. "Why not?" he added, turning toward the shadows where staff usually stood. "Everyone's invited. Right, Miss Jo?" She was behind the pillar, holding a tray of empty glasses, not hiding, working. But every neck had turned, so she became the center of a scene she never agreed to enter. Her expression didn't shift. She blinked once, set the tray down, and moved toward the kitchen. He probably expected her to blush, maybe smile politely, decline the attention. Instead, She walked out as if nothing had been said at all. Later, in the hallway, the boy was waiting. The one she always saw with a book and crooked tie. 8, maybe 9 years old. Felix Barlow's son. He looked up from his bench by the staircase. "You ever go to parties?" he asked. Jo adjusted the strap on her shoulder bag. "Not like these," she said. He nodded solemnly. "You'd look good if you dressed up." She gave a small smile. "You think so?" "Yeah. You got good eyes, like you see stuff people miss." She blinked again. He was already back in his book. That night at home, the apartment was still. Window cracked for breeze. In the closet, she pulled out the old photo from behind the coats. Her mother, standing straight, elegant in a cherry-colored gown, laughing, one hand at her hip, the other holding a cigarette like a queen. Jo sat on the bed, legs crossed beneath her, the photo balanced on her lap. She made the call. "You still sew?" she asked. A long pause, then a laugh. "Girl, for you, I'll start tonight. What you need?" "Red," Jo said. "Bright?" "No. Deep. Like real." "I know what you mean." The next 2 nights blurred, work, sleep, thread. She met Lorna in the back of the hair store near Carol. The dress was half-pinned to a mannequin. "It's not done," Lorna muttered. "But it will be." Jo reached out and touched the fabric. It was soft, heavy. Her face didn't change, but something in her shoulders relaxed. "Try it on," Lorna said. Not yet." On Thursday morning, as the sky cracked open with rain, Jo cleaned the gold room. Always the gold room. She wiped down a glass with a name etched in cursive at the base. F. Barlow. Her fingers lingered over the letters, just a second too long. By the time she left that evening, the buzz had started. People whispering in the elevators, staff snickering in corners. She heard Marie say, "I think she might really go." No one said it to her face. No one asked either, but that night, she didn't bring the hoodie home. She left it in her locker and walked out wearing just the white shirt she'd pressed that morning. Under her coat, the red dress hung, waiting. Waiting like breath before music. The cab pulled up slowly, its tires whispering over the gravel just outside the grand front steps of the Barlow Club. The headlights lit up the double doors, gold trim glowing faintly in the June dusk. Inside the cab, Jo sat still for a moment, her gloved hands folded in her lap. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "You sure this the place?" he asked. Jo looked up, her voice even. "Yes." A pause. Then the driver shrugged. "All right then, go get 'em." She stepped out carefully, heels clicking once on the pavement. The dress moved like something alive, rich folds of red catching light, dipping low, curving in silence. She pulled her coat tighter for just a moment, then let it slide down her arms. The wind picked it up like a curtain and laid it across her arm. She turned to the steps. They were taller than she remembered. The sound of her shoes against the marble was sharp, rhythmic. No one waited at the entrance. There was no usher, no nod of acknowledgement. Not even a glance from the man at the door. Jo walked forward, not too fast, not slow. Her hands hung by her sides. She didn't touch her hair, didn't reach for her clutch. Just walked. As she passed through the archway into the main hall, the first conversation dropped. Then the second, then nothing. Heads turned. People stopped mid-step, mid-drink, mid-laugh. Time thinned. She stood in the doorway for a breath, One long inhale. A woman in a sequined gown turned to look, then looked again. A man in a velvet jacket whispered something sharp to the person beside him. The string quartet hesitated, barely, but enough. One note late. Then they continued. In the center of the room, Felix Barlow stood near the bar, a glass in one hand, the other gesturing lazily as he spoke to a cluster of donors. Someone beside him noticed first. Their eyes widened slightly, and they nudged him. He turned, amused at first, then froze. For a moment, Jo didn't move. She stood tall, the deep red of her dress catching the chandelier's light and sending it dancing along the floor. Her hair was swept back in a low, clean twist. No jewelry, no sparkle, just that quiet, absolute color, and the way she looked back at them all. Calm, unreadable, already beyond explanation. Barlow's smile faltered. His mouth opened, but nothing came. The young hostess at the check-in table cleared her throat, flustered. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you on—" "She's on the list," someone said. It was the maître d', firm. Slightly surprised to hear himself say it, Jo gave a slight nod and walked into the room. The crowd parted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in stutters, like water making way for something it doesn't understand. One man near the piano whispered, "Who let her in?" Another voice, "That's Barlow's joke, remember?" The DJ, up on the mezzanine, looked down from his booth. His hand hovered near the fader. For 1 second the music dropped out. The silence hit like a breath held too long. Then the track picked back up, smooth, pretending nothing had happened. Jo stepped onto the ballroom floor. She didn't need to look around. She could feel it, the cold heat of eyes, the invisible thread of whispers pulling taut, 1,000 silent judgments and one steady heartbeat. Hers. Barlow raised his glass again, slower now. He tapped it lightly with a ring. "Ladies and gentlemen," voices dropped. "Tonight is about elegance, about inclusion." Someone chuckled, unsure if it was safe to. He smiled, practiced. "They say beauty saves us. Maybe that's true. Maybe tonight, beauty walked in wearing red." He raised his glass higher. "To the unexpected." Polite applause followed, hesitant, more out of habit than warmth. Jo didn't flinch, didn't lower her eyes. She stood near the far wall now, her hand resting lightly on a gilded column. She watched the room, not defensively, but fully, taking in everything. The way women shifted uncomfortably in their heels. The way the men looked through her, past her, then back again, trying to decide what she was. Then someone moved. From the edge of the crowd, a young man in a black server jacket stepped forward. Thin, careful. She'd seen him before, once carrying a tray twice his size, another time, sweeping when he thought no one saw. He hesitated, then approached. He stopped just short of her. "Would you—" He paused, eyes flicking to her hand, then up. "Like to dance?" His voice was soft, unsure, but it was not mocking, not forced, not part of any joke. Jo looked at him. Slowly, she nodded. He offered his hand. She took it, and they moved to the center of the floor. The crowd didn't speak. The quartet, sensing something, shifted their tempo. The music swelled, warm and alive. The violins breathed. They danced, reluctant, slow, but it came. Applause filled the hall. Not thunderous, but real. Some turned away. A woman in a tight red dress gathered her purse and walked briskly toward the coat room. Her heels clicked faster than she intended. She didn't look back. Joe smiled, just faintly, as the music curled around them. When the dance ended, she let go of the boy's hand gently. He bowed, unsure if it was right, and stepped back. She placed her palm on his shoulder, brief and warm. "Thank you," she said. He grinned. "No, thank you." From across the room, Felix Barlow approached, slower than usual, the smirk gone, replaced by something harder to name. "Ms. Wallace," he said, quiet now. She turned. "You clean up well." Joe looked at him. No smile, no tilt of the head. "I've always been clean," she said. He blinked, tried a chuckle. "You know what I mean." She nodded slightly. "I do." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Something inside him seemed to shift, like furniture being moved behind a closed door. The music started again. People returned to talking. The air began to thaw, but the red remained. And in the center of it, still and watching, stood Joe. Unmoved, unfolding. The night was not over, but something had begun. Applause faded like waves pulling back into the ocean. Not sudden, just slow, uneasy. People glanced at each other, adjusting jewelry, smoothing lapels, reorienting themselves in a room that no longer made sense the way it had an hour ago. Joe stepped off the dance floor, her hand brushing against the soft gold of the curtain as she passed. She moved toward the far edge of the hall, where the light was dimmer, shadows calmer. She didn't need to be in the center anymore. That wasn't the point. A woman with pale skin and hair like snow intercepted her halfway. Draped in navy silk, the woman held a champagne glass as if it were a weapon, but her expression had softened. Her mouth pulled into a hesitant smile. "That was extraordinary," she said. Joe inclined her head. "I'm glad you stayed to see it." The woman gave a quiet laugh, like it surprised her. "So am I." She turned away after that. No name exchanged, no gesture, just the pause of acknowledgement. Behind them, near the bar, two younger women huddled over a phone, whispering too loudly. One of them, tall, anxious, in designer red, kept glancing at Joe, then at herself, as if trying to recalibrate what elegance looked like. She finally placed her drink down, unfinished, and walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. Joe stood still. She felt none of it as victory. Not revenge. It wasn't even triumph. It was like air, weightless, but everywhere. What she felt most was clarity. By the wall, the boy who had danced with her was speaking to the maître d'hôtel. Joe passed them just as the older man placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You did a good thing," he said. The boy looked up, confused. I just danced." The maître d' nodded. "Exactly." At the far end of the room, near the display of vintage brandy, Felix Barlow poured himself a fresh glass. He held the decanter a little too long. The liquid sloshed. Joe approached slowly. She didn't. "You made quite a joke." He breathed through his nose. "I didn't think you'd show up." "I know." He swirled the drink, looked down into it. "I meant it as, well, doesn't matter now." Joe waited. He glanced up, more tired than embarrassed. "You proved your point." She shook her head slightly. "No, I didn't come to prove anything." He squinted. "Then why?" Her eyes held his for a long moment. "To be seen." That silence again, full, unsettled. Then he nodded once, not in apology, but in recognition. That would have to be enough. She turned and walked away. Somewhere behind her, the music had changed again. Jazz now. A slow rhythm, loose drums, a trumpet curling into the ceiling like cigarette smoke. In the kitchen hallway, Marie leaned against the wall with 2 coffees in hand. "Told you you'd shut 'em up," she said, handing over one of the cups. Joe accepted it, warm between her fingers. Marie smirked. "You walked in like a damn queen. That's all they're gonna talk about for weeks." Joe sipped her coffee. "They'll move on?" "Yeah," Marie said. "But they won't forget." In the morning, the service entrance creaked open just past 7. Joe stepped inside, back in uniform. Black shirt, black pants, name tag over her chest. But the silence was different now. The guard at the back nodded to her. Not a big nod. Just enough. In the hallway, one of the younger staff said, "Morning, Joe." She responded with a quiet, "Morning," but her voice landed softer now. It didn't echo against indifference. It meant something. In the locker room, her hoodie was still folded where she'd left it. On the bulletin board outside the manager's office, a new memo was tacked up. Effective immediately. All employees are eligible for ballroom invitations. Identification badges will be redesigned. Speak to HR if interested. F. Barlow. Joe didn't smile, but her breath deepened. She stepped into the main hall again, mop in hand, coffee tucked to the side. The floor was still sticky from spilled champagne. Glitter in the carpet. A heel abandoned under the piano. She knelt and picked up the heel carefully, set it on the table upright. In the restroom, she paused. Same mirror, same light. She looked at her reflection. Steady. She reached into her bag, pulled out the lipstick, and this time, applied it. Red. The same red. She pressed her lips together. Let the silence settle. Then, one sentence. Just to herself. Just once. Now they know I was here. And she didn't whisper it. She left the restroom door swinging behind her.